I'm Ethan Miller, aka Shadowbane in Legends of the Azure Dynasty. If we're being brutally honest, which I always am, I was pretty much the undisputed king of DPS on the Western server. Some even whispered global. But hey, I'm a humble guy. Mostly. My life revolved around perfectly executing raid strategies, optimizing every single stat on my gear, and, okay fine, occasionally flexing a little on the newbies who thought they could waltz into a raid without a clue. Someone had to set the standard, right? It wasn't about being mean, just efficient. I lived in my cramped but cozy apartment, pretty much just me, my custom-built rig, and enough energy drink cans to build a small fort. My reputation in-game? That was my gold. Real gold, not just the virtual kind. It was my legacy, my pride. Then Lily Chen waltzed into our guild, Phoenix Rising, and frankly, she felt less like a rising phoenix and more like a perpetually flailing baby chick. Seriously, this girl redefined Noob. Every other day, it was a new saga. "Shadowbane, where do I turn in this quest?" she'd chirp, usually after I'd explicitly marked it on her map. Or, "Shadowbane, why did I aggro the entire dungeon?" she'd wail, having apparently mistaken stealth for a suggestion. My patience, usually as vast as the Azure Dynasty itself, was taking a beating. I swear, I sighed so often, my diaphragm was probably getting ripped. But, guild camaraderie and all that jazz, so I, reluctantly, very reluctantly, became her personal, unpaid gaming tutor. It was like her special skill was turning my perfectly structured, optimized gaming sessions into a chaotic, adorable mess. And yeah, I just called her adorable. Don't judge me. One Tuesday night, we were slogging through the Dragon's Breath Canyon, a place that, true to its name, involved a lot of fire. Lily, bless her cotton socks, kept standing in said fire. Again. I was trying to explain the kiting strategy. Basic stuff, like breathing, but apparently not for everyone. It was literally about pulling the boss away so it didn't just smash our tank into oblivion. "Lily," I started, trying to keep my voice even, you gotta, pull the boss away. You know, that thing where you keep it moving, like you're dragging it along, so it doesn't just wail on the tank." I frowned. What the heck was that word? It was right there. I could practically taste it. A word I'd probably typed, spoken, and even dreamed in 1,000 times. A word as fundamental as jump, or eat, or, I don't know, Wi-Fi. But it was gone. Just poof. Vanished from my brain, leaving this weird gaping hole. "Like what, Ethan?" Lily's voice, annoyingly chirpy, pinged through the headset. Like you're, keeping it moving back and forth so it doesn't just wail on the tank." I finally blurted out, feeling a ridiculous, fiery flush creep up my neck. Me, Shadowbane, forgetting a basic game term? My brain, the supposed supercomputer that ran my entire existence, had apparently decided to take an unscheduled coffee break. Honestly, sometimes I think my own brain is just messing with me for kicks. After the raid, which by some divine miracle we cleared, mostly thanks to my sheer willpower and Lily's accidental heroic death dives, I immediately minimized the game. My fingers flew across the keyboard, typing out "Game Tactic, Keep Boss Moving Away" into the search bar. I needed to confirm I wasn't just losing my mind. The search results popped up, a blur of game forums and strategy guides, but then, below the perfectly normal stuff, the auto-suggestions started getting weird. Like really weird. How to remember words you forgot. Feeling like losing basic knowledge. Suddenly can't recall simple concepts. I stared at the screen, a weird icy tickle running down my spine, like someone had just traced a cold, unseen finger along my backbone. Who searches for that? Was Google trying to gaslight me? Or was my browser secretly picking up on my internal monologue? That was kinda creepy, actually. I quickly slammed the laptop shut. Nope, not dealing with existential crises at 3 a.m. My brain was already fried enough from trying to teach Lily how to not die. A few days later, I was still simmering, complaining to Mark, our guild leader, about Lily's latest escapade. She'd tried to heal the tank with a damage spell, which, awesome healing. Seriously, Mark, I griped, running a hand through my already messy hair. It's like talking to a brick wall that occasionally sets itself on fire. And get this, the other night, I completely spaced on the word kiting. Like poof, gone from my brain. Had to describe it like some Neanderthal. Embarrassing, right? Mark, a burly guy who always looked like he'd just wrestled a grizzly bear and won, furrowed his brow. He nodded slowly, his expression surprisingly serious for someone who usually joked about everything. Huh, he mumbled, a strange look in his eyes. That's wild you mentioned that. I swear, the other day, I was telling my kid about some kind of, that thing where you go back and forth, and I just couldn't for the life of me remember kiting. Just vanished from my head, like it was never there. Must be the age, right? He gave a short, awkward laugh, a forced chuckle that didn't quite reach his eyes. His eyes were wide, unblinking, holding a mirror to my own creeping unease. My blood ran colder than a dungeon in the Arctic. Mark was laughing, but I wasn't. The conceptual contagion, my brain annoyingly supplied, dragging up some obscure Wikipedia article I'd probably skimmed once, was real, and it wasn't just in my head anymore. This wasn't some funny getting old moment. This was shared and weird, really, really weird, like a bad sitcom plot suddenly becoming real life. That same night, the universe decided I hadn't had enough weird. I was pulling an all-nighter, farming some ridiculously rare crafting materials. Lily, naturally, was online too. She had this habit of logging on at bizarre hours, like 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. I swear, how did this girl even function in daylight, let alone in real life? I was deep in concentration, my fingers flying across the keyboard, my eyes glued to the screen, my whole being focused on not getting obliterated by a pack of elite mobs. Without really thinking, my thumb found its way to a tiny, crescent-shaped scratch on the plastic frame right next to my left CTR key. It was almost invisible, probably from when I accidentally dropped a screwdriver on it months ago. A completely unconscious habit, a little fidget, something I hadn't even consciously registered I did until a moment later. A private message popped up from Lily. Ethan, it read, "What do you think when you touch that crescent scratch next to your keyboard? I see you do it a lot when you're concentrating." My fingers froze mid-air, hovering uselessly over the keys. My breath hitched in my throat, sounding like a dying cat. I stared at the message, then down at my thumb, still resting on that microscopic scratch. That tiny, almost imperceptible mark. That unconscious, unspoken, unnoticed habit. I had never, ever mentioned that scratch to anyone. I barely even registered it myself. It was a secret, not even to myself. And yet, Lily Chen, this clumsy, endearing noob I only knew through pixels and voice chat, knew about it. Knew about my habit, knew about my unconscious fidget. A shiver, this time not icy, but blazing hot, shot through me, making my skin prickle. It wasn't just about a scratch. It was about her knowing something only I could know, something I didn't even know. This wasn't funny anymore. This wasn't some quirky coincidence. This was wrong. Terribly, terrifyingly wrong. Like finding out your pet goldfish can quote Shakespeare. The message ripped open a forgotten corner of my mind, a place I'd sealed off with concrete logic and a whole lot of denial. It took me back to when I was 7 years old, a tiny, gangly kid in oversized pajamas. It was a sweltering summer night in July, the kind where the air felt thick and humid even indoors. Suddenly, the entire neighborhood plunged into darkness. A massive thunderstorm had rolled in out of nowhere, knocking out the power grid. Our house, usually bright and bustling with the hum of electronics, became a pitch-black cave, eerily silent, except for the furious drumming of rain on the roof and the occasional earth-shaking crack of thunder that made my small frame jump. I was alone in my room, clutching a cheap plastic flashlight my dad had given me. The weak beam danced nervously around the room, making shadows leap and twist, turning familiar furniture into monstrous shapes. Then, just for a split second, near the closed window, I saw it. A small, indistinct shadow. Not a clear shape, more like a smudge in the darkness, but it was there, fleeting, gone as fast as it appeared. And at that exact same moment, a faint, almost inaudible whisper drifted from just outside the window, a tiny, breathy sound that, even now, felt like it was calling my name, Ethan. My 7-year-old brain, a truly magnificent rationalizing machine even back then, immediately went to work. That shadow? Oh, that was Midnight, Mrs. Henderson's black cat. She was a sly one, always sneaking around, probably slipped through a tiny gap in the old window frame, looking for shelter. And the whisper? Easy, just the wind, playing tricks with the rain and the loose old panes. Kids, right? Always imagining things. My parents, bless their hearts, had confirmed it. "Oh, that was just Midnight, honey, probably looking for shelter from the storm," Mom had said, ruffling my hair, her voice soft and reassuring. "And the wind can make some pretty spooky noises, can't it?" Dad added, patting my shoulder, his smile warm. I'd believed them, absolutely. I'd told that story at family gatherings for years, chuckling about my childish imagination and how logical I was even then, even at 7. 20 years, 2 decades of solid, undeniable truth. I was 28 now, a man of logic, a top-tier gamer who laughed at superstitions. But the memory of that almost invisible scratch, a habit I didn't know I had, known by a girl I'd only met in a virtual world, it made that old, settled memory shift. It made the foundation crack. My phone was still clutched in my hand, Lily's message burning bright on the screen. "Ethan, what do you think when you touch that crescent scratch next to your keyboard? I see you do it a lot when you're concentrating." My thumb, still hovering over that scratch, felt alien, disconnected from my hand, from me. What if Midnight hadn't been locked in Mrs. Henderson's shed that night? What if there wasn't a tiny gap in my window? What if all those logical explanations, the ones I'd built my entire world around, suddenly felt thin, flimsy, like paper walls against a hurricane bearing down on my perfectly ordered reality? And Lily? Who was she? Or what was she? The question swirled, dark and cold, in the pit of my stomach, turning my insides to ice. The apartment, usually a haven of solitude and digital adventure, now felt watched. The subtle scratching sound I sometimes heard at night, always dismissed as old pipes or the neighbor's weird hobbies, suddenly seemed louder, closer. It was like it was coming from right behind me, a faint, insistent scraping that dug into my nerves. I whipped my head around, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, but there was nothing, just the empty, dimly lit room. My gaming chair, my posters of epic fantasy landscapes, my overflowing bookshelf. Normal. Too normal. If it wasn't Midnight, if it wasn't the wind, if it wasn't just a dream, then what the heck happened that night? And Lily Chen, who was the real Noob here? I suddenly felt like the biggest, most clueless noob of all, caught in a game I didn't understand. And then another message pinged from Lily. My eyes darted back to the screen, where her avatar, a perky little elf with bright green armor, still danced cheerfully, completely oblivious to the utter meltdown happening on my end. "Ethan, you there? Why'd you go offline all of a sudden? Want to do quests tomorrow?" My fingers, still trembling, didn't move. Tomorrow? I didn't even know if I'd make it through tonight. The faint scratching returned, a soft, rhythmic drag, this time undeniably coming from directly behind my headrest. The air grew heavy, like static electricity before a storm, pressing down on me. The room, which I'd considered my safe haven, now felt like a cage, and I, the top-ranked player, was utterly, terrifyingly trapped. My heart was doing the Macarena against my ribs, an unscheduled, terrifying solo performance. That faint scratching sound, it was right there, like someone was trying to file down a fingernail on the back of my headrest. I practically dislocated my neck whipping around, but, of course, there was nothing. Just my beloved gaming chair, looking as innocent as a freshly baked cookie. My room, usually my sanctuary, suddenly felt like a perfectly wrapped booby trap, and I, the clueless idiot who just tripped the wire. "Get a grip, Ethan," I muttered to myself, my voice a little higher pitched than I'd like to admit. "It's just old pipes, or the house settling, or maybe a rogue squirrel trying to dig its way through my wall to start a nut stash. Yeah, a squirrel. Definitely a squirrel." My internal monologue sounded like a desperate salesperson trying to convince themselves the product was great, even as it melted in their hands. But the logic was failing me. The logical explanations I'd built my entire adult life on were starting to feel like Jenga blocks being yanked out one by one. And Lily, that clumsy, innocent little noob, she was the one with the wrecking ball. My apartment, which used to be my fortress of solitude and high-speed internet, was now a horror movie set, and I was the guy who always checks under the bed. Which, by the way, I totally did. Every single night, multiple times. I was practically doing an hourly security sweep. My game performance took a nosedive faster than my dignity when I tried to explain kiting with interpretive dance moves. Seriously, I was Shadowbane, top-tier DPS. Now I was making mistakes even Lily Chen would scoff at. Missing heals, standing in fire, accidentally pulling extra mobs like I was trying to host a party in the dungeon. My guildmates were probably wondering if I'd finally started mainlining energy drinks for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The worst part? I kept seeing things. Just quick flashes in my peripheral vision. A blur near the door, a smudge by the bookshelf. Every time I snapped my head around, it was gone. Just the usual clutter. My brain, the overachiever it was, kept trying to tell me it was just my eyes playing tricks. But my gut, which was now permanently tied in a knot, knew better. My gut was screaming, "Run, you idiot!" One night, after I finally forced myself to log off, because even Shadowbane needs sleep, apparently, especially when he's being stalked by phantom squirrels, I wandered into the kitchen. My nerves were strung tighter than a guitar string after a rock concert. I needed something to calm the storm brewing in my head. A cup of herbal tea, chamomile, because nothing says manly top-tier gamer like a nice, soothing cup of chamomile. The old fridge hummed, a familiar, comforting sound that usually meant food and safety. Tonight, it just sounded hungry, like it was waiting. I was pouring the hot water, my back to the empty kitchen, when it happened. A tiny, almost imperceptible giggle. Light, airy, mischievous. Exactly like Lily's laugh when she'd accidentally pulled an entire room of trash mobs and then somehow survived. But it wasn't an echo from the headset, because the headset was on my desk, and Lily wasn't online. This was a ghost of a sound, a whisper of a giggle, right there, lingering in the air like a phantom tickle. "Ethan, you're losing it," I chastised myself, my voice barely audible. "Just stress. Too much screen time. You're hallucinating. She can't be here. She's pixels, dude. Just pixels." My brain, the stubborn mule it was trying its best to put a logical bandage on a gaping wound. But then, as if the universe itself wanted to prove my brain wrong, I heard a sharp clack. I flinched so hard I nearly dropped the kettle. My eyes shot to the fridge. There, on the tiled floor, lay my favorite pixel art magnet, a tiny, blocky knight. It usually stuck to the fridge like superglue, a mini gargoyle guarding my takeout menus. That thing was heavy. It never just fell. My breath caught in my throat. And then, the fridge door, which I could swear on my life, my rank, and my entire Steam library, I had just pushed firmly shut, slowly creaked open. Just a sliver.
enough for a faint wisp of cold air to escape, like a sigh. And with it, a smell. Light, sweet, vanilla. Not a strong, overwhelming vanilla, but that specific, almost ethereal vanilla scent I'd seen described in Lily's character profile, the one she'd chosen for her in-game aura when she showed off her new armor. It drifted past my nose, then vanished, as quickly as it had appeared. I didn't think, I reacted. My hand shot out, slamming the fridge door shut with a force that rattled the entire kitchen. My heart was pounding like a drum solo gone rogue. I pressed my ear against the cold metal, listening. Nothing, just the hum. I yanked the door open again, scanning the interior. Milk, juice, leftover pizza, completely normal. The vanilla scent was gone, replaced by the faint tang of refrigeration. My logical brain tried to reassert itself.
Humidity, it whispered. Thermal expansion. Magnets sometimes lose their stickiness. And the smell? Probably the air freshener, you idiot. But my gut, that wise old sage, was shaking its head. This wasn't just my senses messing with me. This was the world around me mimicking the things that terrified me, playing along with the nightmare. I stumbled back to my desk, my head swimming. My phone, lying innocently next to my keyboard, suddenly vibrated, nearly sending me through the ceiling. I snatched it up, my fingers clumsy. It was a message from Lily. My eyes scanned the screen, and my blood, I swear, froze solid in my veins. It was like I'd just taken a bath in liquid nitrogen. Ethan, the message read, chirpy and innocent, remember that green stuffed animal you hid under your bed when you were a kid? The one with the missing button eye? I thought it was super cute. The phone slid from my trembling fingers, landing with a soft thud on my mouse pad. My entire world, the solid, undeniable reality I'd lived in for 28 years, shattered into a million tiny, glittering fragments. The green stuffed animal, the missing button eye. I hadn't told anyone about that. Not my parents, not my closest friends, not even my therapist, if I'd ever had one. It was a secret tucked so deep into the dusty corners of my childhood mind, I barely remembered it myself. A secret, a memory, a thing that only 7-year-old me and that stuffed animal had shared. My head snapped towards my bed. My eyes, wide and terrified, were glued to the shadowy space underneath it. The air was thick, heavy, pressing down on me. I could almost feel a presence, small and ancient, lurking there, watching me, waiting. The faint scratching sound started again, louder now, insistent, coming from somewhere deep within the recesses of my room, just beyond my sight. It wasn't just behind my headrest anymore. It was everywhere, and it was right here. My heart wasn't just doing the Macarena anymore. It was full-on breakdancing, doing backflips and spinning on its head against my ribs. That green stuffed animal, the one with the missing button eye. I hadn't told anyone about that. Not my parents, not my closest friends, not even my therapist, if I'd ever had one. It was a secret tucked so deep into the dusty corners of my childhood mind, I barely remembered it myself. A secret, a memory, a thing that only 7-year-old me and that stuffed animal had shared. My head snapped towards my bed. My eyes, wide and terrified, were glued to the shadowy space underneath it. The air was thick, heavy, pressing down on me. I could almost feel a presence, small and ancient, lurking there, watching me, waiting. The faint scratching sound started again, louder now, insistent, coming from somewhere deep within the recesses of my room, just beyond my sight. It wasn't just behind my headrest anymore. It was everywhere, and it was right here. My heart wasn't just doing the Macarena anymore. It was full-on breakdancing, doing backflips and spinning on its head against my ribs. That green stuffed animal, the one with the missing button eye.
a secret so deeply buried it practically had its own archaeological dig site in my brain. My parents, bless their hearts, probably thought I'd forgotten it existed, or maybe never even knew about the missing eye part. I hadn't told anyone, not even my closest buddy, Mark, who still laughed about my obsession with collecting bottle caps when we were 7. And now, Lily Chen, the pixel person, the noob, the girl who couldn't tell a health potion from a mana flask, knew. The phone lay there, face down on my mousepad, like a tiny metallic tombstone to my sanity. My world wasn't just shattered, it was pulverized, then sprinkled with nightmare dust. Every single rational explanation I'd ever clung to, every logical brick in my carefully constructed adult life had just dissolved into thin air. It was like I was living in a sitcom where the laugh track had suddenly been replaced by a chilling whisper. Okay, I mumbled, scrubbing a hand over my face. My voice felt like it was coated in sand. There has to be an explanation. Maybe I mentioned it once, in passing, like in a dream I had and then somehow vocalized while half asleep during a late-night raid? No, that's insane. Even for me. My brain, which usually prided itself on being a master logician, was now just doing interpretive dance with existential dread. The faint scratching sound, the one I'd been so convinced was pipes or squirrels or my imagination running a marathon in the wrong direction, it was back. And it was louder, so clear, so sharp. It wasn't just in the room. It felt like it was part of the room. Like the very walls were shedding their skin, revealing something raw and terrifying beneath. It was behind me, on my left, then a quick shift, it was on my right. I spun around so fast, my chair groaned in protest. Nothing, just the empty space, my wall art of a dragon breathing fire, and my overflowing laundry basket looking suspiciously menacing. I kept doing it though, a pathetic, frantic pirouette every few seconds, my eyes darting into every shadowy corner, expecting to see something. But there was never anything, just the ghost of a sound and the feeling of eyes on my back, cold and patient. This was a new kind of panic.
Not the, oh no, I pulled too many mobs panic, but the, oh no, my entire understanding of reality is a lie. It made the Macarena heart dance look like a gentle waltz. My hands were shaking, not just a little tremor, but a full body tremor that made typing a simple text message feel like I was defusing a bomb in an earthquake. No more Mr. Nice Gamer, I declared to the empty room, my voice a desperate attempt at bravado. If you want to play games, I'll play games, and my game involves loud noises and absolutely zero creepy whispers. So I did what any rational human being in my situation would do. I cranked up the volume on my speakers. I mean, full blast. If you don't hear the neighbors complaining, are you even doing it right? I went for my all-time favorite, a heavy metal track with a drum solo that could probably shatter windows. The kind of song that makes your teeth vibrate. I figured if the room was filled with enough glorious, ear-splitting noise, those delicate, spine-chilling scratches and whispers wouldn't stand a chance. They'd be drowned out, flattened, obliterated by the sheer force of pure, unadulterated rock. But, you know, life just loves to hit you with a plot twist when you least expect it. As the guitar riffs tore through the air, vibrating the very floorboards beneath my feet, something else started to happen. The scratching didn't disappear. Oh no, it got clearer. So much clearer, in fact. It was like the music wasn't drowning it out at all. Instead, it was doing the exact opposite. The crushing rhythm, the heavy bass, the screaming vocals, they became a canvas, a noisy, chaotic canvas upon which the tiny, insidious scratching and the delicate, breathy whispers were painted in vivid, horrifying detail. It was like the music was isolating them, turning them into the lead instruments in a symphony of terror. Every drum beat punctuated a scratch.
Every guitar solo was a backdrop for a faint, chilling whisper, so soft it felt like it was blowing right into my ear. It felt like the whispers were riding the sound waves, becoming more prominent, more insistent. My brain tried to form a logical argument for this. Sound amplification? Resonance? Maybe the heavy vibrations are loosening something in the walls? That's it! Loose bits of plaster, just making tiny noises. But even I knew that was pure bull. My logical brain was now officially on strike, probably sipping piña coladas on a beach somewhere, refusing to deal with my current nightmare. This was too much. The universe was literally mocking me. My hands shot out, slamming the power button on my speakers, plunging the room back into a heavy, oppressive quiet. The silence, after the storm of metal, was somehow even worse. It felt thicker, colder, heavier than before, pregnant with unspoken threats. The tiny, insidious sounds were still there, still dancing on the edge of my hearing, no longer highlighted, but just waiting. I needed an answer, a real one, a human one, someone who knew things, someone who remembered. My parents were no help. They were too invested in their midnight the cat theory, and honestly, they'd probably just tell me to get more sleep, honey. But there was one person, the ultimate keeper of family secrets, the ancient scroll of local gossip, the human Google of our ancestral past, Grandma Ruth. She lived out in the sticks, a tiny farmhouse surrounded by fields, oblivious to online games, and probably thought Wi-Fi was a new brand of pie. My phone, which had been abandoned on the mousepad, now felt like a lifeline. My fingers fumbled as I picked it up, my thumb hovering over Grandma Ruth's contact. I took a deep, shuddering breath, trying to calm the earthquake inside my chest. This was it. This was my last, best hope for a rational explanation. The phone rang. Once, twice, then a click. "Hello? Ethan, honey? Is that you? Your voice sounds a little thin." Grandma Ruth's voice, raspy but warm, was a small comfort. It was a voice from a world where cats were just cats and not harbingers of existential dread. "Grandma," I started, my voice catching, sounding exactly as thin as she'd said. I cleared my throat, forcing myself to sound normal, like I wasn't on the verge of adopting a tinfoil hat as my primary headwear. "Yeah, it's me. Just calling to check in and ask you something. Something kinda weird." "Weird," she chuckled, a gentle, familiar sound. "Everything's weird these days, honey."
Is it about that newfangled computer game you're always glued to? No, Grandma, no, I rushed to say, then immediately regretted it, because a part of me desperately wanted her to say, "Oh, the computer game? You mean the one where you're talking to a ghost from your past?" But no, that was my brain trying to write its own horror script again. It's about, remember that night when I was little, like 7 or 8, the big power outage? There was a moment of silence on the line, just the faint static. Then the rhythmic, delicate clink, clink, clink of her knitting needles. A sound so normal, so mundane, it almost made me want to cry. "Oh, that night," she said, her voice softer now, almost a murmur. "Yes, I remember that one. Blew out half the town. Your mother was so worried you'd be scared of the dark." "Yeah, well, I told her I saw something, a shadow, and heard something too, a whisper." I pushed the words out, trying to make them sound casual, like I was just recounting a funny childhood memory. "But Mom and Dad always said it was midnight. You know, the Hendersons' cat. They said it probably just squeezed in through that old, rickety window in my room, and the whisper was just the wind through the cracks. They always said it was just midnight, the neighbor's cat." I clung to that name, Midnight, like a drowning man clings to a piece of driftwood. It was the only logical explanation I'd had for 20 years, the only thing that made sense. On the other end of the line, the knitting needles paused. The silence stretched, thin and brittle, and for a terrifying second, I thought I'd broken Grandma. Maybe she didn't remember. Maybe she'd forgotten too. Then her voice, soft, gentle, almost ethereal, came through the phone. It was calm, too calm. "Oh, that night you said you saw midnight?" she repeated, her voice just above a whisper, completely devoid of surprise, or even much inflection. "I remember that. But the power was out, not just in our house, but the whole neighborhood was dark as pitch that night. How could you possibly have seen the cat?" My blood ran cold. The phone felt like a block of ice in my hand. "And anyway," she continued, her voice still so light, so utterly casual, the knitting needles resuming their gentle rhythm, clink, 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 each sound a hammer blow to my chest. "The Hendersons' midnight? He was locked up in their shed all that day. Sick, he was. Poor little thing. He never made it out. And, you know," she added, as if an afterthought, "the Hendersons never had a daughter." The phone slipped from my suddenly numb fingers. It hit the carpeted floor with a soft, almost imperceptible thud, making no more sound than a falling leaf. My eyes, wide and unblinking, were fixed on my monitor. There, on the screen, Lily Chen's avatar was still dancing, a bright, cheerful sprite in a world that no longer made any sense. Her tiny, pixelated form swayed, oblivious, eternally happy. My vision blurred. My face felt like a sheet of ice. All the color drained away. That forced, nervous smile I'd been wearing for days, it was gone, wiped away like chalk on a blackboard, leaving behind nothing but an empty, vacant stare. If it wasn't the cat, or a dream, or a shadow, then what happened that night? And who, or what, is Lily Chen? The faint scratching sound started up again, clear as a bell, no longer trying to hide. It was right